You are anxious right now. You might not feel it, but somewhere underneath the surface of your day, a quiet alarm is running. Maybe it started when you checked your email and saw a name you didn't want to see. Maybe it happened when you scrolled past a headline. Maybe it was just the sound of a notification you weren't expecting. Something small, something that, by any rational measure, poses absolutely no threat to your survival. And yet your body responded as if it did. Your chest tightened, your focus narrowed, your jaw clenched without you telling it to. Here is what nobody told you. That response wasn't a malfunction. It was a system working exactly as designed. The problem is that the system was designed for a world that no longer exists. Your brain is not a modern machine running ancient software. It is an ancient machine trying to run a modern world. And the gap between what it was built for and what you are actually asking it to do is responsible for almost everything that feels wrong with the way you think, feel, react, and live. Neuroscientist and evolutionary psychologist David Buss has spent decades mapping the mismatch between the human brain's evolved architecture and the demands of contemporary life. His core argument is precise. The brain you are using right now was shaped by selection pressures that peaked somewhere between 50,000 and 200,000 years ago on the African savanna. Every reflex, every bias, every emotional reaction you have was tuned by that environment. Not this one, that one. And you are now running that ancient hardware in a world it was never asked to navigate. This is called evolutionary mismatch, and once you understand it, you cannot unsee it. It explains why you are afraid of snakes but not of cars, why you crave sugar in a world drowning in it, why you compare yourself to people you will never meet, why a single cruel comment from a stranger online can ruin an entire day, why silence feels uncomfortable, why you feel lonely in a city of millions. None of these things make sense if you assume your brain is rational. All of them make perfect sense if you understand what your brain was actually built to do. Start with fear. The human brain's threat detection system is ancient, fast, and spectacularly inaccurate. Deep in the center of your brain sits a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It processes threat signals before your conscious mind has even registered that anything happened. A twig snapping in the dark, a face that looks angry, a sudden loud noise. These inputs bypass your rational prefrontal cortex entirely and go straight to the amygdala, which fires an immediate alarm response. Adrenaline releases, heart rate spikes, muscles tense. You are ready to run or fight before you have decided whether there is actually anything to run from or fight. In a cave, this was invaluable. The cost of a false alarm, your heart rate spiking at a shadow that turned out to be nothing, was trivial, a few seconds of wasted energy. But the cost of a missed alarm, failing to respond to a real predator, was death. So natural selection tuned your threat system toward extreme sensitivity. Better to be scared 1,000 times by nothing than to be calm once when it matters. You inherited that system, and now you are running it in an office, on a commute, in a comment section. Every notification, every social flight, every ambiguous tone in an email activates the same ancient circuitry that evolved to keep you alive on a landscape full of predators. Your amygdala does not know the difference between a lion and a passive-aggressive reply from your manager. It responds to both the same way, at full alert. This is why stress in the modern world feels so relentless. It was never designed for an environment where the threats are constant, low-grade, and never fully resolved. Your ancient brain expects danger to either kill you or go away. It was not built for the slow background hum of a deadline that never ends, a debt that accumulates silently, a relationship that is perpetually unresolved. The alarm system keeps firing because the threat never fully disappears, and a system that was never meant to run continuously is now running all the time. Now consider something more subtle, your social brain. Psychologist Robin Dunbar proposed what became known as Dunbar's number, the idea that the human brain evolved to track and maintain relationships with approximately 150 people. That was roughly the size of a functional hunter-gatherer band. Everyone in your group you knew. You knew their history, their loyalties, their moods. You knew who was trustworthy, who was dangerous, who owed whom a favor. Social knowledge was survival knowledge. Being excluded from the group in a world without walls meant death. Loneliness wasn't an emotion, it was a warning signal. Stay connected or die. That social monitoring system is still running inside you. Every time you walk into a room and immediately scan for who likes you and who doesn't. Every time you rehearse a conversation before it happens, running through possible responses, possible outcomes, possible judgments. Every time you feel the particular sting of being left out of something, a group chat, a plan, an invitation, that pain is real because it was always real. It was the pain of potential exile, of the group moving on without you. But now your brain is trying to run that same system across thousands of relationships simultaneously. Social media alone asks you to monitor, manage, and emotionally process hundreds of connections in real time. You were not built for this. Dunbar's number is not arbitrary. It reflects a real cognitive limit. The social brain evolved to track roughly 150 people with care and precision. Ask it to process thousands, and it does what any overloaded system does. It starts making errors. It amplifies the worst signals: criticism, rejection, comparison, because those were always the most survival relevant. And it drowns in noise. This is why a single negative comment from a stranger can outweigh 50 positive ones. Your brain doesn't process social feedback like a spreadsheet, tallying positives against negatives and calculating a balanced score. It treats negative social signals as threats, and threats always get priority processing. One enemy in the group mattered more than 50 friends, because one enemy could end you. You were not designed to be popular. You were designed to survive. And sometimes those two things look very similar, which is why it is so easy to confuse them. Now turn your attention to the way you eat, because this one is perhaps the most visible consequence of evolutionary mismatch in modern life. For the vast majority of human history, calories were scarce and unpredictable. The hunt failed. The fruit was out of season. The river ran low. Your ancestors lived in a world where surplus food almost never existed, so your brain evolved a powerful, deeply embedded drive to consume calorie-dense foods whenever they were available. Sugar meant ripe fruit. Fat meant animal protein. Salt meant minerals the body needed. When your ancestor encountered these things, the right move, the survival move, was to eat as much as possible before someone else did, before it rotted, before the season changed. Your brain still has that drive. Every craving you feel for sugar, fat, and salt is that ancient system running exactly as designed in an environment that has infinite sugar, fat, and salt available at every hour of every day. Your dopamine system lights up at the sight of food the same way it did when food meant survival. The problem is not your willpower. The problem is that your willpower is a relatively recent cognitive development being asked to override a survival drive that is millions of years older than it is. That is not a fair fight. Evolutionary biologist David Lieberman at Harvard has spent years studying this mismatch in extraordinary depth. His work shows that many of the chronic diseases most prevalent in modern societies, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, are not signs of personal failure. They are the predictable outcomes of an ancient body operating in a world it was never designed for, eating foods that did not exist in its evolutionary environment, moving far less than it was built to move, sleeping on schedules disconnected from the light cycles that calibrated it for millions of years. Your body is not broken. It is doing exactly what a body optimized for scarcity and physical labor would do when placed in an abundance and sedentary comfort. It is storing every calorie it can. It is conserving energy wherever possible. It is following ancient instructions that made perfect sense for 100,000 years and make none today. And then there is the question of your attention, your focus, or rather your inability to sustain it. Your brain was not built for monotasking. It was built for continuous environmental scanning. On the savanna, allowing your attention to rest fully on a single task for a sustained period was dangerous. The animal that focused completely on gutting a kill while ignoring the rest of the landscape didn't survive long. Your ancestors who thrived were the ones whose attention kept moving, catching movement at the edge of vision, processing sounds in the background nearby, tracking changes in the social group nearby, all simultaneously. You have that brain, and you are now sitting before of a screen trying to focus on a single document or task for hours at a time, while your ancient attention system fires every few minutes, pulling your focus outward, scanning for novelty, scanning for movement, seeking the unexpected. Every